This is Noah and this is Harrison. This is one day before Noah was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
When you first get the diagnosis, there's test strips and different insulins and food, what they're eating, and kind of get in that role of what you think diabetes is. So there you think this is going to change their life forever. They're not going to be able to be a normal kid.
I remember Noah was having really bad symptoms. He was drinking a lot of water, going to the bathroom a lot, really just didn't feel well. And so we ended up taking him to the doctors, and they diagnosed him with type 1 diabetes.
I would say it's like a lot of big words of like things I just couldn't even understand, and so it's like I'm sure I was also put in the side of like, it's gonna be okay, don't listen, like we'll handle it, let mom and dad do this, and like in the back of my head, like it's bad news, but I was pretty clueless for a while.
It's like so much education all at the beginning, and you just kind of have to take time to take it all in.
Well, if you think about it, you spend about 300 minutes a year with the diabetes team of the year, and there's 525,000 minutes in a year. So all those other hundreds of thousands of minutes, you're doing it either by yourself if you don't have support, or hopefully as part of a team.
When they were diagnosed, I was to be the strong, calm voice. I let Dawn do whatever she had to do up front. She was committed. I mean, she was taking on every single study that there possibly was.
Diabetes is hard. It's long-standing. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon till we find a cure.
In 2004, UF had a test, a mail away. They mailed it to us, and it was a little cardboard with the little circles, so you pricked your finger and you filled your blood on the thing.
But I was put into a trial nut study. Me and my mom both were, because we had the antibodies to potentially get diabetes. They knew I was going to get it eventually, but they weren't going to crush a little boy by telling him that this horrible thing was going to happen to him.
So you can get bad news, and you can fight the rest of your life against that bad news. Or you can say, okay, I really feel in these two kids, they're young men now, they make it their superpower, right? They've figured out how to use the lessons that type 1 diabetes has taught them to make themselves better at sports, at work, at school, at the human beings they become.
This family, when I think about the Holsingers, they're not just about themselves, they're about others. I mean, when you think about diabetes and you think about their participation, they've participated at JDRF walks. They've participated at JDRF galas. These young kids have been youth ambassadors. These kids have participated at diabetes camps.
And there were times, it's like, hun, slow down. Let's focus on the family. Let's focus on us. Let's take a weekend off. She knew it, at times when I was right. But she never stopped pushing. It was never a question of her giving up.
And so we were monitored pretty closely. We would go about 3 to 4 months a year. Yeah, they would run tests on us, and thanks to that, I was actually diagnosed with diabetes really early.
I'll never forget the words that Noah stated when he saw that Harrison had diabetes, and his heart obviously sank. Yes, he had diabetes, but he wasn't thinking about himself. And he said to Harrison, and I was there, and it moved me to tears, Harrison, if we find a cure, you can go first. He said that. That was at the age of 8 or 9 years of age, and I was blown away.
So there's all kinds of research you can get involved in as a person with diabetes or a family member. What's really important is screening, and that's for people who don't have type 1 diabetes but might have a family member who does. And why is this important? This is important because we now have a blood test, a simple blood test, that can identify markers in your blood that tell us that you're at risk for type 1 diabetes.
So I didn't really have any of the bad blood sugars or the super bad symptoms, just because I was already monitored so closely. And thanks to that, I was diagnosed with diabetes, but I was put in a honeymoon phase, which is just a really easy way of getting into diabetes. It's not as harsh on the body just because it was so early.
It's like anything that happens to someone. Once you get a rhythm of what's going on, you can handle it.
You know, our goal is to improve patients' lives. And the only way we can improve patients' lives is through research, through advances in care.
That's kind of what I was saying earlier. Like this is the battle that we've been dealt with, and so I feel like it's our job and responsibility to make sure that future kids don't have to go through the same battle, or if it's the same battle, it's at least an easier one.
I think what I would do is just introduce them to our family and say, these are the things that we've done. These are the advances that have been made because of what we have done.
And if we know you're at risk, but don't yet have any symptoms, that your pancreas can still do its job, that you can still produce insulin, that gives us a chance to intervene, to do something before you end up with a diagnosis, before you don't have the capacity to produce insulin any longer.
Yeah, and so a lot of times you can replay like the 3-year-old story in me. And so like 17 years ago, people want to ask why were they doing studies back then? And it's because of 3-year-old kids like me just to make it to 20 years old right now. So right now it might not seem like I need the most help, but when I was 3 years old is when I needed it, so.
And that is very important because it helps us prevent type 1 diabetes. But if we don't know you're at risk, we can't put you in a study to prevent type 1 diabetes. And if we don't screen you, we can't know you're at risk. So really everything starts with screening.